You. Welcome to this Committee of the Whole in pink today. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Your Worship, we have an agenda before us and there are no changes.
Excellent. Is there someone who wishes to move that? Thank you, Councillor Richard, seconded by Councillor Kingston. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
The next item would be the adoption of minutes of November 25th, 2024.
Terrific. Thank you. Is there someone who wishes to move those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Butler, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
The next would be conflict of interest.
I do not see any. I think we're good. Merci.
We are now on to new business, making social issues in the community. And I believe Jeff Preston will take the lead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. So we're here today to provide an update on our ongoing efforts to address the complex issues of homelessness and social issues impacting our community. These challenges obviously are multifaceted and require a comprehensive approach. Our strategy is really built on a foundation of collaboration and cooperation with various agencies in the city, as well as external agencies like the YMCA and the province. Our presenters today will be Conrad Landry, Charles LeBlanc, Charles Savoie, Vincent Marola, Shannon Berry with the YMCA, and Joanne Murray from the province is here as well. The group you would have seen in your presentation, I guess, in the CRF with regards to the YMCA and the YRAD program. That's an exciting new initiative that started last year. I know we've talked about it a few times at budget as well, but I think it would be a very interesting presentation and you'll probably have some good questions for Shannon. We're very excited about that part of the program. The presentation is mostly on what I call the downstream side of these issues, not the upstream side. Obviously, we're involved in the upstream side as well when you're talking about diversion and housing and those issues, but a lot of this focus is on the issues of addressing what we see on the streets. Vincent will talk a little bit about the outdoor zone. That was the outside area behind the hub that we ran that project, pilot project, I guess we called it, in the fall. The area is still being utilized, so he'll talk a little bit about that. And Joanne will also have a slide where she'll talk about the provinces and some of the things that they're doing in 2025. Also, I just wanted to update Council that we will be bringing forward a new encampment strategy that's been worked on in collaboration with the various agencies as well. So that's something we'll be bringing in front of Council, and that's really a strategy built on respect, compassion, collaboration, and a really rights-based approach. It's really a reflection of how we're currently handling it, but just laying it out in a very solid foundation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Conrad, I believe will get us kicked off.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for having us today. So I'm just going to start off with the bylaw component, and then we're just going to go to tag team for the rest of the stuff. So I want to start with the kind of a reminder of the structure of the bylaw department. So myself, the director, and then we have Natalie that's here today, Natalie Landry, which is our bylaw coordinator. She takes care of everything license-wise. So anything from taxis to fire pits to cafes. So she's responsible for all those stuff, all the parking reviews and all that. And then we have Charles LeBlanc, which is the manager. So he oversees the entire department. Team lead Marc L'Italien is responsible for the direct supervision of all the staff. On the left, you'll see the community officers. So we have 3 community officers that are responsible for parking and the lobby. So they rotate. So normally it's always the same person at the lobby, but between those 3, they take care of the lobby, flag raising, etc., and any parking tickets throughout the city. Now, the other bylaw officers and community officers they're all certified and authorized to do all that, but it's just less of their focus. We have 3 bylaw officers that are Monday to Friday. Those folks are there to take care of more complicated case for investigation, etc. And then we have 4 CO supervisors. Under them, they have 3 community officers each. So on any given time, there's always, as long as everybody's at work, there's always 4. So one supervisors and 3 officers that are doing 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They do 12-hour shifts, 4 on, 4 off. So that kind of gives you our structure. We are, just as an update, we are doing interviews. We started today to do the interviews to convert as many as we can and hire for city staff. So we're exciting to do that. Just in general, high level, we are doing this 24/7 as of April 2020. We like the presence, the uniform presence, the vehicle is very important, that we just, between calls, that we circulate in the community, that we talk to people. Kind of the next line, the city ambassadors, we want them to talk to community leaders, to business owners, et cetera. Of course, their job is ultimately to enforce bylaws. And that's their main responsibilities. And also they coordinate the cleanup. So they coordinate any cleanup that we get requests, or if they notice anything in the city. This is a pamphlet that we offer to the citizens, so we give this out. It was not clear sometimes what's the difference between bylaw and RCMP, so we decided to do a pamphlet to do that. So this just differentiates that. So for bylaw, you see some examples here. So the difference, again, between our bylaw officers that are Monday to Friday versus the community officers are going to do the stuff that can't wait till Monday. So for example, discarded needles, that can't wait till Monday or Tuesday. So that's their responsibility. Tall grass, well, that can wait a little bit. So that would be the regular bylaw officers. Unsightly premises, same thing. Noise is one thing that can't wait. So our community officers are going to do that. Panhandling, shopping carts, tent sites, animal control. Those are all the community officers that do that because they can't wait. So we have the regular number, the 853-3333, that we encourage people to call in. They can send us an email. Those emails are checked 24 hours, 7 days a week. And then also the report an issue through the website. So those are ways to contact us. So you don't have to wait till Monday at 3 o'clock in the morning. If there's an issue, you can report through these 3 means. Just a few, it's not my realm, but the RCMP, they're more like on the crime stuff. If there's a tent site with people there on a private land, if it's public land, then that's us. But if it's private land, that would be RCMP. If there's any individuals with mental health crisis, domestic violence, motor vehicle collision, panhandling on the streets. So those are, and of course, the crime and their regular duties, but when we're talking about the social aspect. So they have their numbers, again, the 857-2400 for non-emergencies, the 911 for emergency, and they also have a report an issue through their website. Just quickly on some stats on 2024. So social issues. So the department received 2,266 service requests for social issues. So that's include anything that's not kind of a regular bylaw necessarily, that's social issue. Out of those, there was 1,267 that included encampment, meaning someone that built a camp or was sleeping under a tarp or something like that. And out of those 2,266, there was 738 that we had to contract out yard guys, which is a contract that we have with them to clean up these sites. Now, this excludes DMCI. This excludes the downtown core. This is anything but the downtown core. So that was $431,000 that we spent last year for that. In total, yard guys by themselves, they hauled 133,000 kilograms of stuff. And that's not including our regular bylaw officer. If they drive with the half ton and they see some debris or whatever, they'll pick it up. And again, you have to add the DMCI stuff, the Enviro team on top of that. Needles, so the 564, those are needle sites. So one site could have 10 needles. We are working on having better stats on that. We got to consider the safety of the officers. We don't want them to count every single needle, but we are working on that. But right now, so you could probably add a 0 to that, but that's at least probably over 5,000 needles that are no longer out in our community for people to get hurt. Same thing for shopping carts. We picked up 795. That was at least one shopping cart. If there was two, we still only counted as one. So we're working on separating those. But that just gives you an idea of the stuff that they do specifically for social issues. Just briefly, just to compare to our other duties, if you compare year to year, and I'll concentrate on 2024. So bylaw itself, not social issue, but bylaw, any requests for bylaw, we had 3,040 requests last year. So those are for, again, infractions specifically to our bylaw. Social issues total, we had 4,992. So that's not necessarily encampments, or those are all the social issues we might have got. 1,362 license permits. So that's, again, from taxi license to patios. So total, we had 11,449 requests for services. Just kind of, which is separate because people don't call for us to give them tickets, so we had to separate that. So parking tickets, in 2024, we gave 14,253 tickets. So you compare that to the previous years, including 2023, the staff have been really busy and really focused on making sure that the bylaw is respected. And I thought it was interesting to look in how many people pay those tickets. And percentage-wise, we're keeping up. So we're 23% of people that did not pay their ticket. And we're working towards a new software that's automatically, once that's implemented, hopefully by midsummer, that these tickets unpaid will automatically go to the court system, and they'll be dealt with in court. So those numbers should reduce quite a bit in the next few years. I'll finish with two charts, just very impressive. And sometimes councillors ask, well, we're increasing staff, we're giving money. What does that do? Can we see some tangible stuff? So this chart shows April 2020 is when we started the community officer. But more importantly, in November 2022 is when we added the 9 additional officers. So that's where we had 4 officers, 24 hours a day. And you really see the difference. It just started climbing really quite a bit in the different areas, especially social issues. That's that orange bar. You see those numbers increasing quite a bit. And the same thing for overall. So this is all bylaw, social issue, everything together in one basket. Again, you see the 2022 is where it really started going up quite a bit, and it's still going up year after year. So I think that's it for me. I'll pass it on to, and I think Jeff will wait at the end for all questions. Yeah. Okay.
Good afternoon. Okay, so to start off, I'm just going to be talking about the community policing unit. Obviously, the social issues do affect the whole of Kodiak, but I'm going to, I guess, limit the presentation to the community policing unit. So inside the community policing unit, you would have 11 people. So 6 regular members. The rest would be what we would call CIOs, or community intervention officers, and we have 1 manager. So that's what you would see. Right now, there's 4 of those regular members that would be seconded, and those are some of the, we're going to replace those from this year's new batch of regular members. So, okay, so, and they're all located at 795 Main Street. The whole unit is down there. Okay, so there are the 6 pillars, I guess, of the community policing units. That's what they focus on. If you see number 2, the most vulnerable, typically they would include number 1, youth, 3 newcomers, and 4, the seniors. We're going to focus quite a bit more on, we don't call them or I guess categorize them as homeless. For us, it'd be no fixed address. That's what we would be looking at. But also the victims of crime. We'll see how significant that is, and also crime prevention. So the first one, I guess, community partnership table, I guess, that started when the tent city, I guess, was created. So we had almost daily meetings at that point. It finally went less frequent. to the point that now we have once a week meetings, I guess, with most of the participants that will be presenting today, but others as well. It does ramp up sometimes when we have something going on. I guess sometimes even just before Christmas, we were meeting on a daily basis. So that's probably one of the most stabilizing factors, I guess, for community policing and the partners, I think, to face this social issue. So very important community partnership table. The trespass changes, I guess, in 2023 when the law changed. So now it applies to not just a select few properties, but does cover all properties, including private properties. So that's quite a big change, I guess. And to sort of facilitate that, typically it's between the trespasser, I guess, and the property owner, or the property owner's representative. Often that would be by law in some of the more severe cases. So we've, community policing actually built a trespass document so that it could be easily exchanged between a trespasser and the property owner. So that's a new development since 2023 when that was brought online. Essentially now community policing are the ones that deal with all trespass cases. It's not the regular patrol, it would be all under the community policing. We will do special things, I guess, when we prepare the bill packages for such thing, and the community policing unit will put a little bit more emphasis on some of the details, I guess, around that. So, so that's for the trespass. De-escalation training, we've had some requests from merchants mostly, I guess, in downtown, but others, but mostly from downtown merchants, I guess, about de-escalation training to sort of bring down the temperature, I guess, in some discussions between them and trespassers or homeless population. So last year we did 10 training sessions. Typically we get requests for such training sessions from DMCI, but also some that come through directly through community policing units. The sessions last about 2 to 3 hours, I guess, for each session. We have CPTEDs as well, crime prevention through environmental design. Two of the probably the most significant were probably for the hub that we created this year, but also for the Peace Center would also be one where it was very successful and removed or alleviated much of the issues, I guess, that were there. In total in 2024, we did 11 CPTEDs. And there is a direct email, I guess, that you can send your request to, I guess. It goes directly to community policing, but yeah, that's another thing that we did this year so that it was easier for the public, I guess, to reach out. The Victim Services Unit, this particular unit doesn't do all crimes. It just does crimes against persons. So last year we had about a little over 2,300 victim services cases, crimes against people that victim services participated in. And of those, so almost 8 victims per day, roughly. And of those, we followed about 675 of these cases through the court process. So essentially, we try to make sure that they are going to testify, that to provide statements, that kind of stuff, so we can get convictions as well. So it would range from somebody coming home and there's a suicide, and they have to deal with that, to actually a crime against them that they have to go through court. The Garage 529, I guess we started in 2021. This is something we partner with, Garage 529. There's about 2,000 bikes registered now since we started, so about 700 or so per year, roughly. We've had 27 bikes returned last year that were on this program, the 529 that were registered. Typically, we'll do pop-ups, I guess, in Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe, where citizens can come in and register their bikes. Kodiak pays for the sticker, usually about $7.50, I guess, to get the sticker and everything else. This year is something a little different. We actually went to the people that sell, I guess, the bikes. Not all of them are on board, but we're going to actually, they're going to get the stickers when they purchase the bike, when to do that. So we'll still do the pop-ups, but we'll also try to increase that number of people who have registered bikes. Just for a point of reference, last year we had about 312 bikes stolen that were reported, I guess, to Kodiak. The top 20, essentially those top 20, the main part that community policing plays in that they identify who they are. Those will be the ones that are most often show which services they've actually accessed from Reconnect, from the hospital, from whatever. So we kind of build this new part, I guess, in the bill package and hope to influence, I guess, the judge when he's making a decision on this particular case. From the top 20, I guess, in the last 2 years, about 51% of the ones that were, I guess, on the top 20 did not interact with the police following that. Some of them is because they were arrested. Some of them is because they sort of straightened out. So still a pretty significant amount of people, I guess, that got off this top 20. So about a little under 51%. I think I went too far. I do back it up. Perfect, thank you. So the VITRA and extrajudicial measures, the VITRA is violent threat risk assessment. Those are basically a process or a product of schools. So we're part of a committee, I guess, and we'll bring data in for specific students, I guess, that are having issues. You know, somebody that's calling in a bomb threat or is gonna, you know, harm students, that kind of stuff. That's what the VITRA is for. Last year, see how many of those we had. We had 45 of those different ones in 2024. So that was a fairly effective, but again, we assist, I guess, the schools in doing that. The extrajudicial measures, same thing. Sometimes we don't actually take people, I guess, to court. I guess there is different uses. I guess we're supposed to try to use extrajudicial measures instead of actually charging, doing that. So 90%, we had 294 last year, youth, I guess, that went through this process, and 90% did not recommit that year. So very successful project there as well. We do school presentations. We deal with group homes as well. There's 11 group homes, I guess, in Moncton. We had 35 special meetings with all the group homes. 150 presentations, I guess, in the schools. We also do safe plans for all schools, so all of them are done usually by the end of September. So those were all done. For the panhandling, again, a little different way of doing that. There's a panhandling bylaw. I guess we don't use the panhandling bylaw. We basically use the Motor Vehicle Act, I guess, in order to, I guess, take action, I guess, on them. So we basically would do street, I guess, corners and stuff like that. We wouldn't do directly in front of a business. So typically we've done warning, ticket, then appearance notice, and then get them to court. Using this particular technique, 85% of panhandlers in those areas have not come back. It's been steady for the last 3 years. Typically the ones that we do get are new people, I guess, that go in and sort of, hey, there's no one here. Looks like a great spot. And they'll kind of until we get to them, I guess. So that's been very successful. And finally, I think Jeff had mentioned the YRAD. So the YRAD, I guess, as you know, we've had quite a few requests, I guess, to have social workers and different things like that sort of included, I guess, inside of our budget. I guess we've tried quite a few times. We've even tried to hire social workers directly, unsuccessfully, I guess, to do that. So we wanted to come up with something last year, I guess, that would actually have trained professional to sort of deal with this population rather than having police. So we came up with the YRAD, approached the YMCA, see if they would assist us, I guess, in getting this project up. So, but I'll let them speak to them. But incredibly successful to the point that we've gone in and extended this year. Mobile Health Crisis Unit, again, last year, 600 times the ERCMP called them to assist us, I guess, in doing that. And in those 600 times that we called, 88% of them did not have to go to the hospital, or we didn't have to detain them. So again, you can't get better than that particular program. Very powerful, and it saves quite a bit of money doing it that way. The Traffic Safety Committee, I just wanted to put that in there. It's not really social issues, but some people might think of it as a social issue. We have a traffic committee, I guess, that we meet with the 3 cities every month. I guess, and we bring in all the challenging areas, I guess, around traffic to sort of look at. One of the things that we've, I guess, springboarded off of that is the loud muffler. So the loud muffler bylaws around loud muffler have been very difficult to enforce. So again, we've used the Motor Vehicle Act, I guess. So the member would actually stop someone that believes has a loud muffler, and we'll take them to a local garage, and they would actually test it, I guess. And if it doesn't do that, well, they get a ticket, I guess, and a warning, I guess, on their windshield. And in 95% of the cases, we were right. The muffler was illegal. The other 5%, Kodiak has to pay for the testing that was done at the garage. So all in all, it works out fairly well. So the last, I guess, we wanted to mention, I guess, where do we need help, I guess, to sort of get through some of these things? Well, the mental health court, I guess, well, I mentioned that the community policing does a special file, I guess, that they include. That's what this would be for. It would help the mental health court. We have about 20 files a week that would, from our estimation, be going to mental health court every week. Some of them are the same ones that will reappear the following month, and then again and again. So if with a strong mental health court, that number would go down. So we're hopeful that that's going to get off the ground. The 211, it's one of the areas, I guess, where we think it would be very easy. They could be the ones that are dispatching the YRAD program, for example. So we think there's some, the 211 system right now in New Brunswick does not work as we think it should. So we hope that we can put some pressure and maybe assist, I guess, in that, getting that going. Mobile health crisis, it is 7 days a week, but it's only noon to 10 at night. So we'd like that to be around the clock. So that would be a place that we would like pressure put on, I guess, to do that. And then finally, the number 4, the revenue, I guess, against the photo radar system, I guess that's a big question. Who's going to be doing, where does the revenue come from? And to that end, I guess we've started looking at a pilot with the engineering department in Moncton to sort of see how that would work. Like, how would we process the tickets? How many people we would need? How much would this generate? Where would we put them? All that kind of stuff. So that's ongoing as well. So, but obviously the revenue question will be ultimately the one that will decide where that goes. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about our programs. So before I jump into the work that YRAD has been doing since July, I do want to acknowledge that Reconnect, our housing-focused street outreach team, has been at the forefront of this work in Moncton since the early 2000s. And we've been engaging with folks who are experiencing homelessness or may not be accessing other services in community, whether that be them living at an encampment or assisting folks becoming document ready and trying to stem the flow into homelessness that we're currently seeing.
Janet, maybe you could just tell us what is your title and your full name?
You know what? That's
I'm
a great
I'm not
idea.
sure everyone knows you.
I jumped right in.
You did.
So again, my name is Shannon Berry. I am the Senior Director of Community Outreach at the YMCA of Greater Moncton. I've been in that role for about 2 years, coming from Halifax prior to that. And I've been in this role for about 1.5 years now. And I'm very grateful to be able to be here to explain our programs a bit more. And thank you for that reminder. So in knowing that there are gaps in community in terms of services for this demographic and seeing the spike in demand, we partnered with Kodiak RCMP in the City of Moncton to respond to the evolving community needs related to the increase that bylaw was seeing with social issues calls. While our team engages with these folks quite frequently through our outreach work, we didn't always have the capacity to respond in a quick manner for specific calls for service. So in July 2024, we expanded to begin the Y Reconnect Alternative Dispatch pilot project. And this was in an aim to provide a non-enforcement response to non-emergent social issues in our community, such as homelessness, mental health, or substance use. So originally we were able to expand operations to be 24/7 with trained outreach staff to respond to these calls. And again, at the beginning of this pilot project, these calls were coming directly from the Moncton City Dispatch line. And so they were calls that were already coming in for services, and those that met our criteria were being diverted from traditional bylaw response to trained outreach workers to engage in services. So this model is modeled after various projects across Canada that have been shown to be successful, such as in Calgary with Alpha House, or more long-standing programs that exist in the United States, such as Cahoots or STAR in Denver. And we were able, since the beginning of July, our teams responded to 591 calls for service, and 23% of those calls had been diverted from the City of Moncton dispatch line. And quite impressive, 92% of our calls were resolved without the need of further enforcement. So at times when staff attend to a call, we are very familiar with the resources related to social services in the Moncton area. So we're able to provide timely referrals to shelter beds or mental health and addictions teams, and also when necessary, calling in for reinforcements from the bylaw teams that we work with quite closely, or RCMP if applicable. But thankfully, for the most part, 92% of the time, we are able to resolve without needing to involve them in that specific case. And near the end of the pilot project, we did open up calls. It's a specific cell phone line, and we did start to share that number directly with close partners within coordinated access systems. So we frequently get calls from the different shelters or from Salvis or Ensemble related to specific requests as well. And through this work, when we're not responding to an immediate need for service through a call, we are working in partnership with our core Reconnect team and doing proactive outreach. And through that work, we have worked with over 700 unique individuals and provided various services related to housing-focused outreach, such as document readiness, making sure folks have identification, or navigating governmental services such as Housing NB or social assistance through the Department of Social Development. And what does a call kind of look like? So I wanted to highlight some of the different calls that our team had responded to. So homelessness support, so just general support that we could provide. Welfare checks, we do have some staff that are trained as medical first responders, and so we were able to incorporate that a little bit into our approach because we work with a lot of individuals who are distrustful of other services at times, and so we have accompanied individuals to the hospital to get the services they need. Move along, really. It's been a tricky scenario, but through proactive outreach of being able to respond when folks are, navigating that the conflict of occupying a public space, we were able to go ahead of the bylaw teams and provide an approach that was not more supports focus rather than enforcement. And then obviously if the issue still persists, then we would loop in our partners with bylaw to be able to respond. But this approach allowed us to continue working with the individuals that we frequently see in community and already have relationships with through the work that we do, and providing a bit more of a compassionate approach to addressing concerns from the broader community while also balancing their needs in the moment as well. And I think the biggest thing that we've seen be successful with this project is just the strain that it relieves from emergency services, whether it be our CMP, bylaw, or EMS. We have seen through our approach, we've been able to improve community safety and cohesion through that work. And it ensures folks are receiving the proper supports while navigating the resources available. And looking forward, we are grateful to be able to continue the project into the new year. When we first started, it was a pilot project, so we weren't sure what the future would hold. But now that we have some stability with our programming, we're excited to continue to kind of share the program more broadly, let folks know that we exist and what we're doing and how they can reach our services if needed. And as Chuck mentioned, exploring collaborating with 211, as we are now serving also DIEP in Riverview, and it makes more more sense for those folks to reach out through an alternative service rather than the Moncton City Dispatch line. So that was another reason why we shared that number a bit more broadly and had it external from our core, our general Reconnect line. And so far this year, we've already responded to 92 calls for service, diverting. Of those, 33% came from diversions from the Moncton City Dispatch line. So that is some data there, and very open to questions afterwards.
Good afternoon, Council, City Manager, Madam Mayor. I'm here to provide an update on the Hub outdoor area, the Bridge to Home Hub outdoor area that we had out back. But before I get started, I'd like to thank Shannon Berry of the YMCA Reconnect for providing much of this data for us. So here's the timeline. We opened up the back of the hub in October of last year in response to the hub's out of cold beds not coming online until December 1st. So there's a bit of a gap in the cold weather there. Thanks to Council's motion requiring that those out of cold beds remain open year round, our 2025 lease with the province of New Brunswick mandates as such. The space was initially designed to be open from 7 in the morning till 7 p.m., but we found was that folks were setting up encampments around the hub and the outdoor area closed at 7 at night. There were many social media posts about this. I'm sure, councillors, you probably heard about the area around Cornhill and Capitol towards the end of last year, where there were tents and debris, and we were regular communication with residents and downtown businesses about how bad that looked. So we concluded that this was not a tenable solution, and we expanded those hours 24/7. The participants were very desperate in their request for a safe place to sleep. And like, as I mentioned in November, we opened up 24/7 for the back of the hub. This year's point in time count took place on November 21st and 22nd, and having that many folks in the outdoor area of the hub made gathering information that much easier for the outreach teams. On December 5th, all tents were removed with the opening of the hubs out of cold beds, but the space has remained open for folks to congregate and to store items. We've developed a great working relationship with all the stakeholders who are involved. That includes the Bridge to Home Administration, social development, on-site security, RCMP, and bylaw. We were meeting about 2 to 3 times a week, and we were nimble to make adjustments as needed. On site, we had 24/7 security, washrooms, outdoor heaters, outreach, engaging with clients. We also finally got that scene container with 36 large storage bins installed. We installed some gazebos for folks to get out of the elements, and we even provided mats for folks who were tenting to get off of the ground. The usage of the hub, we saw on average about 30 females were using it, 50 males. So we were about 30 people were using the space. The highest tent count was about 60 with an average of 35 tents per night. After the closure of tenting, about 30 to 50 individuals are continuing to utilize the space now. So I think everybody would say that, you know, the outdoor area was nothing short of a success. Calls to RCMP and bylaw were down, and folks genuinely appreciated having an outdoor area where they could exist without the risk of being moved by law enforcement. Reconnect engaged with participants to get their input on the outdoor area, and one of the most common responses they received was that they felt safe, especially for women in that space, with security and not having to worry that you're going to have to move along. Having a great security team that we had there as well, coupled with the wonderful Reconnect staff, made this all possible. Reconnect did a survey with 40 of those participants, and among other questions, asked them, what form of shelter would you prefer? 22 out of the 40 came up with permanent housing as a response, no shocker there. 8 said that they would prefer a tiny home or cabin, so pretty much, you know, the same response. And 3 were looking for transitional housing. Communal shelters, as the way we've typically always housed homeless people, was an option, but surprised nobody picked that. So I think this highlights the need for our community to look beyond the traditional congregate shelter setting, where we pack very vulnerable people with a variety of serious mental health issues, mostly into a large room. And this is not a slight at all whatsoever on our wonderful shelter providers. I'm sure they would probably stand up here and agree with me when I say there is a better way. And our community already has solutions like Rising Tide and Humanity Project's Josh initiative that have been hugely successful, and they're changing people's lives. We just need to invest more into these solutions. And just to end here, I wanted to mention that last month I took a ride down to St. John to learn about the Somerset Acres bunkhouse initiative, and I was completely amazed. For those who don't know, the Somerset Acres bunkhouses, these are the Elantra trailers that have 5 individual units in each of them. Each unit has its own bathroom, kitchenette, heat pump, and air conditioning. I spoke to the participants, the service providers with social development down there, and everybody is in agreement that this is a very positive solution for many of the folks that are living on the streets. People need a private door to be able to shut at night and a place to call home. Until we build actual housing for folks, transitional housing like these bunkhouses is definitely a viable solution, and it's the much cheaper option as well. So I'll leave you with that. And next up should be social development.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to take some time. I thought I'd use my time to do 2 things. One is give you an update on the plans that came out of a community dialogue or that was initiated by the city last summer. I believe it was June 14th. We all, community, went to the Regional Service Commission and had a large conversation about what are the priorities, what are the things we have to do immediately and in the short term and in the long term. From that, I created a 30, 60, 90-day plan for myself to start taking all of these issues. Most of them are social development held anyway, and work away on them. So what you see up there is sort of a color-coded response. The priorities that came from the conversations, I'll go through them one at a time. But essentially, overall, 10 of the 16 priorities were completed and 2 are ongoing. So 12 out of 16 are taken care of. And 4 of them are priorities that are led by other departments, but we can influence the conversation. So those are ongoing and they're at a higher systems level. So they're still ongoing, but they have started. So everything that's in green has been done. The yellow are the partials, the things that are ongoing. And the red are those, actually the whole bottom row should be red. I'm not sure. Looks like a different color from the green, but it should be red. Those are all things that are happening with other departments. So just from the top, the 30 beds we opened at the hub were for recuperative care, so medical beds, people who have physical health issues that makes it extremely difficult for them to stay in a regular shelter setting. We actually just took someone over the weekend who has been homeless, had surgery for cancer in Fredericton, and I just learned today that you can't get chemotherapy in Fredericton. I had no idea. So she had a choice to go to St. John or Moncton, and because we had the recuperative beds there, she chose Moncton. So she'll be getting her chemo, she'll be able to go to the hub. And if that environment is not comfortable enough, we have partnerships with some of the shelters. I'm sure we can find space for her in there, but it's nice to have that option. Supportive housing, operating agreements with Housing New Brunswick and nonprofits. So last year, in 2024, I signed contracts for a total of 186 units, case management for 186 units. What was I going to say? 117 of those are with Rising Tide, so we're providing funding for them to do the case management in all of their units. There's also an amount of money coming from Human Development Council for the same thing, so partnering with them on that. And then the Josh project, the Rising Tide units that were sold to Housing NB, so 21 of those. And then Harvest House, we converted 2 of their buildings. They were completely emptied. Those people were housed permanently. The 2 buildings were renovated and backfilled with 21 people out of shelter. And we provide that case management. And some of that is 24/7. So we're able to house the higher acuity folks. And so far that model is working well. So I anticipate doing more of that. We have 14 more units coming on side this year, probably in the summer, and we'll do the same thing. They'll be 24/7. The third priority was co-creating storage spaces. So in partnership with the city, the security that we pay for in the back of the hub helps operate those 36 storage units that are in the backyard of the hub. And I think it would be safe to say that expanding on that would be a priority for 2025. There's certainly a need for more storage spaces. So in the 45 days row, removing barriers to rent subs. So this was a frustration for community, a frustration for people looking for housing, certainly a frustration for me at social development, that our focus is on housing people, and we kept running up against basically, I think, policies that had just never been reviewed or looked at in a long time. So we've just had meetings, we've had many conversations, and a lot of those barriers have been removed. There's still some ongoing work to do, but some of the really tough barriers that kept people unhoused have been removed, and really pleased with the progress being made there. Identifying housing assets and gaps to match with needs. So I think that many of you have heard about the housing needs segmentation exercise. It's complete. There is a presentation. If you would like to have a full presentation on the results, we can make that happen. Tasha LaRoche is leading that exercise, and she would be happy to come to council and give a presentation on what they found and what the strategy is going forward. Co-creating security strategy for high acuity housing. So this one was related to, I think, the downtown core, as well as people that were being unsuccessful in housing. So we did offer some funding to nonprofits who were doing housing to increase their security cameras systems. We put the security in the backyard of the hub. So we started off with 2, and we now have 3. 1 of those works inside the hub, as well as 2 in the outside. Pathways for asylum seekers. This was a bigger issue last summer. We seem to have a lot of asylum seekers showing up in shelter, a lot of newcomers, people who were here on working, sorry, I've lost the name of what that is, and their employment fell through, so they were landing in shelter. We worked with Magma, and there's a community group called for Vulnerable Citizens in the Greater Moncton, I think it's called, and it's all of the immigration-focused nonprofits that are working on that. So are part of their committee, and we're able to access resources there. And it's much less of an issue than it has been because we have a pathway out of shelter for those folks. On the 60 days, reviewing clinical supports required to meet new housing assets. That's really part of that housing segmentation exercise. So I won't go into detail on that. OTC response to meet sector challenges. So as Vincent said, we're now mandated to keep some beds open at the hub all year round. So we're doing that. There'll be 40 extra beds. This winter, access to the out of the cold beds was less than 90%. It averaged around 90%. So that tells us that we have an adequate number of beds. We don't have the right kind of beds for some people. So that's what we're working on now. There's a segment of the population that's still sleeping outside or sleeping in chairs as opposed to a bed. And that's concerning to me. So we did ask Reconnect if we could add some questions to a recent survey that they did. So that should give us some information. And I've asked Hub staff to have conversations with people that are sleeping in chairs every day. Ask somebody different why they aren't choosing a shelter bed instead of a chair. So we're getting some good information out of there. That's all going to help us with a shelter bed capacity strategy that we're about to undertake. I've just started the process. So we're basically looking at every shelter bed in the city, taking data as a unit and then as individual shelters and looking at who's using shelter, how long are they using shelter, what alternatives can there be besides a shelter bed, with a focus, to be completely honest, with reducing the number of shelter beds we have in the city, but replacing them with something more permanent. So we have a few ideas about what that could look like, but the goal would be, I know when we started Monarch Landing, it was never designed to be a permanent. It was supposed to be a temporary permanent. And as these things go, you just get comfortable. You don't ask questions. You just keep doing what you're doing. But I think the population that stays there has been fairly consistent. So it feels like an easy cohort to pull out of the mix and put into something a little more dignified. So there's that. Where am I? I have lost my notes. Oh, shared professional development. So we weren't able to do as much training as we had planned. There were some issues with the trainers we had lined up. Things didn't get off the ground. I do want to say I'm extremely grateful for the city for making access to the CTRI training accessible for nonprofits. They've asked me to ask you if you could continue that. It's superb training. It's one of the ones on our list, but it's also the most expensive. And but it's extremely valuable training. So we appreciate the city making that available to the nonprofits. We have re-engaged with the trainer and hope that we can get that training back on side, because the training helps make shelters safer. It helps protect staff. It helps with resilience building, staff retention and all of that. So, and making things safer for those people who access shelter. So we're really strong on getting that underway. Peer support community of practice. There is Corey Herc, who was working with O Strategies, has created a table up with people with lived experience and is in the process of formalizing that. So now we have access to a body that when we want to consult with people with lived experience, we can go through him and that table. And it's important to me to have the voice of people with lived experience. So we're grateful to him and his team for making that happen. It doesn't mean that we don't consult outside of that table, but they're there in an organized and formalized way for us to do that. So all of the things on the bottom are basically systems-based priorities that we're working with other departments on. So I won't go into detail with those. Couple of other things. Since the last time I was here, we've added a second consultant in the zone. So Tyler Cameron is working with me. He's going to take the focus on shelter and outreach and the hub, and I'll focus on housing and special projects. One of those special projects is the bridge housing for the mental health court, so we're working diligently on that. There's an actual exercise next week where we'll do a walkthrough, so we're progressing. We'll do a walkthrough of someone going through the court system, through the mental health assessment and into housing. So that's exciting. There is a focus for our department to continue offering funding for case management, like operations for supported housing. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Is there anyone else? Jeff, that's it? Oh, great. Well, fantastic. Questions, council? Go ahead, Councillor Steves.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, everyone. This was a great idea to have everybody in the same room and bring up this conversation and find out where we are. Vincent, could you come to the microphone? And some of these questions may be for you and perhaps for our CAO. I just want to get into a little bit more and give you an opportunity, Vincent, to talk a little more about the Somerset project in St. John. It has been mentioned here at council not too long ago. So thank you for going down and gathering that information. So I'm going to ask you like 3 or 4 questions, but just basically just to tell us a little bit more about that and if we can start to dream about that here in Moncton. So in your visit, where do the people go during the day? Is there a yard and whatnot? Did you talk about that surrounding Somerset? How long do people stay? Perhaps there's not enough stats on that quite yet. Was there an influx in people coming to St. John because an individual room was now available? And then who's dreaming about this or starting to calculate initial numbers here in Moncton? Where are we at for this? Stating where we're at is totally great, but we probably need to start making decisions today if we're looking ahead to next winter, if this was in our future. So I just wonder between Serge and yourself, if you could just kind of update us on that. Is it a possibility here in Moncton?
It absolutely is. And we have a small team already looking at it. We're looking at potential vacant city lands that might be an option for us to place one of these little communities. And kind of the way I sort of see this rolling out is, it wouldn't just be a one-off. You would develop little communities throughout the city and surrounding areas. To answer your first question, as far as to sort of a communal space where people can use, they did. I know in St. John they had one of the Atlanta trailers was a communal space. There were a washer and dryer in there and bigger showers than the ones that would be in each of the units. But also the way it's sort of designed, it's sort of it makes a big box on 1 acre. I think 1.5 acres in total. And essentially the trailers are on the perimeter and there's an open space in the middle. They only just started these the end of last year. So I would imagine they're probably going to beautify the area a bit more, and we can certainly look at doing that if we were to do that here in Moncton. Where folks go during the day, this is their home. They're able to shut the door. Folks can stay there all day, come and go as long as they want. There's no rules. It's just the same as if any of us had a home. That being said, I'm sure people are connected to programs within the community, be it the food banks or connecting with outreach or social development and what have you. I don't know if I answered every one of the questions.
Yeah. Was there an influx in people coming to St. John because of the availability?
That's a good question. I didn't ask that, but we can certainly get that answer for you unless, don't know where. Oh, you can answer it. They did not. There you have it. They were all chosen from the by names list, so people were already engaged with services, and but apparently there was not an influx of people moving to St. John for that reason.
The other question that I don't know if there's an answer to, but it's just a speculation. The individuals that don't choose the shelters, that are out in tents and refuse to come in, do you think that would be enticing for them?
Oh, Absolutely. The way it's sort of designed in St. John is it's transition housing. So people would still be in the shelter system. And this is sort of that step to sort of learn, for folks to learn tenancy, how to have proper tenancy. But I think as I alluded to in my presentation, this really is like a 21st century solution to homelessness. This is what we should be building instead of more cots in a big room, right? Again, no slight whatsoever on the shelters, but today, throughout the winter, we had about 200 people throughout the entire winter in Moncton that choose to be outside, even with empty shelter beds. We're doing the best we can with the resources we have, and that's existing, shelters with cots in a big room. But ultimately, this is what we should really be looking at as a solution to homeless, as part of the solution to homelessness.
Okay. So Jeff, you'll kind of be driving that in the future for council?
Yeah, we've already had some conversations with Joanne and some other counterparts at the province. Isabel and I were on a call. We're going to be meeting with planning to look at some possible viable locations. I think Joanne may want to add, I don't want to put you on the spot, Joanne, but no, it's, we've had some initial conversations, very interesting project. Okay.
Yeah, just to say that as social development is very much on board, we've had that initial meeting. There's support for it, there's funding for it, and I think we've started working on it.
Okay.
And we'll take what they did in St. John and make it better for Moncton.
Yeah. So really like a 2.0 approach to our homeless situation. Okay. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Richard.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Thank you for the presentation. Thanks for everybody showing up here. I had a question on the slideshow. There was some information on, I think it was slide 5, where it's showing the social issues for 2024. It would be nice to see what's happening, like where we were in the past and how, and as we move forward, just to see the numbers where we're winning and maybe not winning as hard. I don't want to say that badly. That's just a comment I wanted to make. I don't know who would.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Dishaw. Just so I'm clear, so that we have one that goes from 2017 to 2024, but
Yeah.
you're looking for more.
The slide before that, this on that slide that you're mentioning, there's prices and unpaid. Looks like it's unpaid tickets and stuff. So it's not all
So you'd like the information that's on that slide.
on the
to
slide
show
before that. There's
Okay.
the slide before that says social issues 2024,
Right.
right there.
No, we do have that. Okay.
It would be nice to see just how we've progressed and
Okay.
if there's some places that we're lacking.
Okay, we can do that.
Merci. Chuck, moi question. You mentioned a traffic safety committee. Is this city or tri-community committee?
3 communities. Yeah, monthly. So the 3 engineering departments and Kodiak meet together.
So it's city staff?
Yep.
Okay, correct. I just wanted to clarify, see if we had members of the public or, Shannon. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
Just quick, your presentation was in both official languages, the PowerPoint. I'm guessing that the services for YRAD are bilingual,
Correct. We do have staff that are fluent in French and English.
offered in both. No, that's great. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much. Merci.
Next up, Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Joanne, could I ask you a question on this project that's undergoing, we're currently in St. John that you talked about? You're with social development.
Yes.
So on Mapleton Road in Moncton, there's a rehab center with 14 beds, I do believe it is, addiction services or something along that line.
On Kendra?
On the
Kendra.
corner of
Yeah.
Mapleton and Kendra. That building has not changed. The province has not put any additional rooms in there. There's maximum 14 rooms for people with mental health or addiction services in that building. Is that still correct and to your knowledge?
It's a detox center.
Detox, thank
Yeah,
you. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's where people would go for a period of time to
Detox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's run by the Department of Health.
And do you know how long they're in that building for?
There's different programs.
Okay.
That's-
So this project that's ongoing in St. John, is there a possibility that that could be put on that same property, piece of property? So that these people can access services? Are we talking, because it's a pretty large lot that's sitting vacant.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, because not everyone who's moving into those units would necessarily need detox, right?
And I get that.
And it's owned, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I think we're looking at other locations, other possibilities.
Okay. And you, in your presentation, you talked about rent subs.
Yes,
And I've asked you the question before. How many rent subs do you currently have that are open today?
I don't know, but I think I'm gonna guess, so please don't hold me to this. We had 50. We've probably used 10 of them.
Okay.
And those would be rent subs for market rent housing. So where the barriers was in the maximum amount of rent that would be covered. And it used to be something like $980 a month. So there's literally very, very, very little stock at that price.
Okay.
So the process was always the individual would go find a unit higher than that. They would have to come back to Housing NB, ask for an exception. This takes oftentimes a full month to process. And by then the apartment is long gone because somebody shows up behind them with the cash to get in.
Right.
So now there's a blanket exception. So they don't, if it's a reasonable amount of rent, you don't have to go through that process. It would be accepted.
Okay. And the project that's happening in St. John, I was there last week. I drove by, seen it. I'm not going to make any comments on it until I can get more information on it.
Yeah.
I was there for business, but that is being paid for by social development, or a part of that is being paid by the province, or is the whole project being paid by the province?
My understanding is it's a partnership with the city and social development.
Okay. And we don't know how the breakdown is, if it's 50-50, 60-40.
I don't have that information with me. I could get it, but I don't have it with me.
Okay, good. Thank you, Your Worship. That's all.
Thank you. Something very strange is happening here. I don't know what's going on with it. I had Councillor Kingston next, but you're good?
No, I was going to ask a question.
Okay, you've disappeared. Can you press your light again? There you go.
Red's back on?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Madam Addis. Maybe to Vincent, I guess maybe I'm into the weeds a little bit. And to understand, you did mention you approximately 200 in Moncton that won't go to the remaining beds that are open, 90%, that figure. So that's high acuity by names. Is there an indication, Vincent, that with the Somerset Acres model in the city, a large percentage or some of that 200 gang would, yes, I'm ready to maybe access a Somerset Acre model, as opposed to saying no completely now to going into a bed?
I would say the vast majority of the population.
majority.
The vast majority.
Well, that's powerful stuff. It
Yeah,
really
it's
is.
not everybody. And I just also wanted to highlight too, and it's in the WAG, so council does see it. But I just wanted to highlight, just because it just came out for January, what are numbers of folks who are experiencing homelessness from the Human Development Council. And in January, the numbers spiked pretty high. So total experiencing homelessness for at least one day, excuse me, this month in Moncton, 772. Individuals experiencing chronic homeless, meaning that they've been homeless for at least 6 months out of 12 months, or a year out of 2, for at least one day in the month, 484 people who are chronic homeless in Moncton. Our community is able to house about 40, 50 people, or house about 20 people, 20, 30 people per month. But every month we're seeing about 40 to 50 new people to homelessness. So again, I mentioned this before, Council, we're learning as we go, and we have really good partnerships. And I think today exemplifies that we are fine tuning our whole process, but at the end of the day, it's still a losing battle.
Right. I guess my point was that 200 gang, they're indicating a willingness to move into a Somerset Acre type design, because that's the key. you do speak to them or some of them on a regular basis through the nonprofits. So you're getting that indication very, very strongly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Vincent. Merci, Madame Addis. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Butler, I had you up next, but you've disappeared as well. Did you want to go? Yeah.
No, I never had it up.
Oh, okay. Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Terrio.
Merci, Madame la maire. Merci à tous pour votre présentation. C'est très apprécié.
Thank you to all of you for your presentation, which is very appreciated.
Going with all of this, what does the future of homelessness look like? Is anyone somewhere addressing those issues? It's not a Moncton issue. It's an international issue. So are there any discussions about long-term solutions and maybe even prevention? So can anyone reply?
I can speak to that for sure. So one thing I will acknowledge is that Moncton is very privileged to work within a coordinated access model. So all of the agencies work really well together, and there's multiple meetings that happen weekly for different levels of conversation, levels that we are included in. And for just to touch on the unsheltered as well. So in community per HIFIS, 333 individuals are unsheltered, with 179 of those 100% of the time sleeping rough, and the rest of those are in and out of shelter. But I will say that our outreach teams engage with all of those individuals, and we are a housing focus. So we are looking at what are the next steps. And that doesn't mean you have to enter shelter to get to housing, but how can we make sure that you can move straight from an encampment into housing, as our programs have done. Talking about those big picture upstream ideas, our coordinated access group is very strong in Moncton, and we were the first in Atlantic Canada to create that table in Moncton or in our community. And outside of that, there's frequent conversations with national movements from Built for Zero or the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, where there's information sharing, looking at those long-term and big picture approaches that can help slow the inflow into homelessness that we are seeing. Because you're right, it's not just a Moncton problem, it's a North America problem. And on top of that, one thing that our program is really lucky to be able to provide is prevention and diversion work as well. So in 2024, we successfully diverted and prevented 182 individuals and families from entering homelessness during the year or diverting them from the shelter systems. And so within that work, and partly with YRAD and our continued partnership with the RCMP, is also those diversion cases as well, when we can confirm that there's support for someone or housing or family in another province or community, and we're able to help send them back to where they have those natural supports. So just to touch on, obviously, outreach is often the first interaction with folks when they enter homelessness or maybe are still learning what the resources are or things like that. But we're always looking at those big picture, long-term goals. How can we break down those barriers? In 2024, with New Brunswick alone identification, we supported individuals obtaining 519 pieces of identification, and that was in the form of Medicare cards, birth certificates, and photo IDs. And again, those are examples of ways that we're breaking down those barriers for folks, whether they're accessing shelter beds or sleeping in encampments, to move forward to their housing journey.
That is really great. Thank you so much. But do we know why? Why do we have so many people suddenly, it appears, homeless? So is anyone exploring that?
That's definitely a really big question and has lots of complex answers. From my understanding, definitely post-pandemic, it's a different atmosphere, and across Canada, we are seeing the numbers rise. In looking at like the cost of living alone, for 2024, in terms of the financial requests for even just damage deposits, it was about $70K that we received as an organization to support with grants. And for arrears, that's with NB Housing or NB Power, the total amount that we were requested was just under $60K. So the need is there, and that's why we've been able to successfully support so many prevention and diversion cases, is because those requests are coming in. And then big picture, I would also say that the lack of supports for addiction and mental health, and we're seeing our toxic drug supply having an impact, and the longer that folks remain in homelessness, the more complex their needs become, as we're seeing with the rise of chronic homelessness in our community.
So those are so many, there are so many complex issues to deal with. So who's responsible for the advocacy with other levels of government and making sure that everyone is connected on this issue?
Yeah, I will touch on that. During a lot of our groups, such as the Greater Moncton Homeless Steering Committee, we have representation from nonprofits, from municipal cities, Moncton included, and also at the federal level and provincial. So there is a lot of conversations happening. The Human Development Council of St. John's does distribute Reaching Home funds, which are federal funds for specifically this issue. So there is a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversations about how can we stem the inflow that we are seeing while addressing the needs of those who are in precarious situations at the moment.
Thank you so much. So maybe I have a question for Jeff. So I don't know if you're responsible for this report that came to us. So before we go to a public, or are we going to go to a public meeting with this? It would be interesting to incorporate some of this information that this young woman just gave us, and maybe a little bit more.
We are in a public meeting, just for the record, but right now, we have media here, the cameras are
No,
on.
but does this go to another level, to another meeting, or is this the last time we hear about?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. So today was for information purposes. So there's no decision making and it's not coming back to the public forum. We could determine, however, in the next couple of months, if we want to bring it to a public forum, then we'll have that conversation internally and bring it back to council for consideration.
That would be excellent. Merci. Merci.
Thank you. Councillor Edgett.
Merci, Madame la Maire. This report has been rather inspiring, I must say, because it's so complete. And your presence here today to answer questions and to present the individual work that's going on with so many different agencies is very positive, and it shows that we're in good hands, and it also shows to the residents of our community where their tax dollars are being spent in order to address these problems. And I think this is information that Councillor Theriault is pointing out that we need to share as much as possible. When I'm reading through this, we have so many solutions which involve government and nonprofit agencies and in general professionals who know how to deal with these issues. And at one point you were talking about the excellent training that we provide. I think you mentioned this to those in the community and that sort of thing. So my thought during this presentation is to what more can the residents of our community do to in some ways show their compassion or to assist in some way? Is there some sort of aid or way we as a municipal government can help our residents to feel more comfortable living with people who are homeless in their community, people who are in need, or to even feel more comfortable approaching someone who appears to be in need in order with the objective of not necessarily reporting them, because we certainly have given them lots of opportunities to report and let go. But are there anything else that we could do or help our residents to learn how to do to show that we are a very compassionate community, and we're not just relying on the legal enforcement and bylaw individuals to look after the problems that exist throughout our community? That's the thoughts I had today.
I think that's a really great question. And I will say through the other organizations that we work with frequently, there is a lot of support out there, whether that's through providing in-kind donations such as winter boots and jackets, financial support, or volunteering their time with some of the various meal programs that exist in our community. I know speaking for the YMCA Greater Moncton, one of our focuses is on education and bringing that awareness to what does it mean to be homelessness, what does it mean to be experiencing homeless. homelessness. I think often sometimes there's different stereotypes that can immediately come to folks' mind, and the reality is it can be anyone. And I think it's very easy to point to individual decisions and say, oh, well, this person is making bad choices, and these are the different criteria or barriers that are going on, and I would never make those same choices, and therefore I'd never be in that position. The reality is, through the work that we do with prevention and diversion, is it's really those system barriers and failures that folks are falling through the cracks, and that's how they're getting into those situations. And that's a lot more scary, frankly, because that can happen to anyone. That's not an individual making a poor choice. That's, you know, how our systems are set up. In 2024, we did a project, Finding Humanity in Homelessness, and did several interviews, audio interviews of individuals both experiencing homelessness and workers in the field to try to break down some of those that stigma that exists in community and highlight what are folks' unique stories and how did they end up in different challenges. Another large focus that we have is on language and being people first with our language and looking beyond just the situation or condition that folks are experiencing and putting the person first. So those are the little things that we try to do within our organization, but we do see quite a lot of support in community, and we love to celebrate the wins that do happen. I know based off the HIFIS data that Vincent pulled earlier today, we also saw 111 move-ins into housing for individuals that were experiencing chronic homelessness. So there are lots of successes happening, but I do find that in community, ourselves included, the demand for service is sometimes so high that we don't always get to share those positive experiences. And so it's always nice to be able to do that. But I do know that from the Greater Moncton Steering GMHSC table, one of our goals for this year is advocacy as well as communication and restarting our website and social media and being able to share those highlights, and also how can folks engage in services and be a part of the solution.
Great, thank you. I appreciate your hard work.
Go ahead, yeah.
One of the pieces I think that's most important is that we are looking at facts, because oftentimes there's a lot of numbers of homelessness and so on. And Human Development Council has a public-facing dashboard. And Social Development has recently met with them, and we're working on making that more intuitive. So there's numbers presented, for example, the 700 and something who are homeless for at least a day.
Right.
What does that tell you?
Mm.
700 could have been homeless for a day, and we only have 99 homeless people in community. Or 700 and whatever could be homeless for a day plus and are still homeless. So we have to do better with explaining what that means. And also, instead of just presenting the numbers and leaving it up to us to analyze and interpret, that they would provide the analysis right on the dashboard. So it makes more sense, and people can actually use that data to understand what's happening and trends, looking at trends.
I think that's all very, very important, and I think it's of interest to people in the community as well. And like I say, I think it would bring out the support and compassion from our individual residents more so to be part of the solution.
So I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's such a great question. I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in the coldest night of the year on Saturday night, and there were hundreds of people in our community that were out, you know, actively supporting. And I hear from community members as well that really do want to do meaningful work to help with this. So I think we're onto something with that. This has been such a great update. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Councillor Crossman, because I think you've been advocating for this for a long time. So really appreciate the opportunity today to hear from everyone and to, you know, take the time to celebrate as well, because this is incredible progress our community has made in the last couple of years. When we met recently with the Minister of Social Development, Cindy Miles, and you know, talked about what is happening in Moncton and just how far we've come, particularly when it comes to the communication that's happening between the different agencies. Like, that's night and day compared to what was going on before. So really, really appreciate the work that's being done on that, and that there's a real sense that we're we're moving in a positive direction, and that there aren't just the same knee-jerk responses to things all the time, that we're working for and looking toward more sustainable outcomes. So, you know, congratulations to everyone who has worked so hard on this over the years. It's really come a long way. I love hearing the data. We are, you know, actively trying in everything that we do here to be values driven and data informed. And it's, you know, seeping into all of the decisions that we make. And I think as a community, I am really proud of the work that we've done to move toward providing housing, because we know that the solution to homelessness is housing, whatever that looks like along the spectrum. But without a safe place to live and get your act together, it's really difficult to move forward. And really excited about some of the news around the mental health court and the action that's being taken there. I'm wondering, all of the housing that we're talking about around the mental health court or for the highest acuity complex cases, or is this all sort of this, could that also be the Somerset Acres bunkhouse? Like, are we talking just about maybe 21 units that could be for all of that? Or can you provide some clarity, Vincent?
Yeah, I think the bunkhouse is going to be a solution for most of the homeless population, especially given, you know, with a strong mental health and addiction presence, for sure. That being said, I wanted to just share, and this is something that was alluded to earlier with Tasha LaRoche's report, that, you know, they did an analysis. It's about 85 people that we've identified in community that are just too high acuity. Nonprofits, the way we have them designed now, cannot offer services to this population. So out of the whole population, unless there's serious mental health and addiction and investments, health investments as well. We know most of the homeless population does not have a prescribing clinician assigned to them. We need to make those investments as a community, for sure. And I think even those 85 right now, as it stands, if we're going to put them in a bunkhouse without the mental health and addiction supports, they probably wouldn't all succeed. But that being said, I think it would be a viable solution if we did have those supports in place, even for that population.
Excellent. 85, that's a big number.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Yeah, that's, wow, okay. All right. Thank you all very, very much for working together on this. It's really great to take the time to hear of the solutions you're working on. So thanks for being here today.
The next item is the CRPA budget request process, and I believe our CAO will take the lead.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Today we're bringing forward, it's following the previous budget deliberations that we had back in December. And we're going to be seeking council approval regarding future funding request by the Kodiak Regional Police Authority for additional RCMP staffing. There's no presentation. The CRF has been put forward. As we all know, the CRPA budget has drastically increased over the past few years, and projected major increases for the future as indicated by the Kodiak Regional Policing Authority. We've known that the budget has increased since 2021 by 65%, for a total increase of about $22.5 million in the operating budget of the CRPA and the RCMP over that period of time. If we compare that to the overall city budget has increased by about 38.5%. So making the increase in the CRPA being the largest increase in any of the government department or city departments. We also know that it's not clear that if those increases lead to increased public safety. So our recommendation in front of council today is that any future request must be tied to a business case, indicating how future requested resources are projected to improve measurable outcomes so that council can assess the investments versus addressing other priorities. Making the bridge back to what the mayor just indicated about values driven but data informed, is getting the data to inform our future decision making. We know that recent Stats Canada report that came out has indicated some improvements around public safety in the city. However, we want to make sure that if we are going to continue to consider significant increases in the CRPA, that it will result in improved public safety for our communities. That's all I have, Mayor.
Terrific. So there is a recommendation before council. Is there someone who wishes to make that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Edgett. Councillor Butler, did you wish to second it?
I was looking at the recommendation that CEO was talking about, and I just have one issue with it. It says, including staff increase being proposed, the CRPA will provide the Riverview Town Council with comprehensive data analysis. Why is it Riverview Town?
So thank you for bringing that up, and I think that's just a typo. We've been working with the three cities, Moncton, Riverview, Dieppe, to make sure that the same motion is passed by all three municipalities, as we are partners with CRPA, and that's just a typo. It should say the City of Moncton Council, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. So you don't wish to second this, Councillor Butler?
I have to, I can second it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna vote for it, but I'll second it to get it going on the table.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yours.
So when we talk about this, on there was a slideshow, with the budget, and, they talked about, not, possibly getting the 17 members that we had asked for. They were talking about 7 for about the 7 employees. I would like to know, maybe from finance, if we had them 17 members today, new RCMP members, plus the 7 new city employees, what would the cost be to us? Like, we've been playing with this, is that we're going to get 3 now, maybe 3 later, maybe 3, and then, maybe the rest of them in 2026. But when I talked to the superintendent when he was here at the open meeting, he said that they were guaranteed to get 17 members by the end in 12 months. So, I just like to know what we're dealing with, because one of the things that we did do is that Councillor Legier, myself, and Councillor Bourgeois, we had talked about looking at different ways with our ad hoc committee. And one of the things that council voted on, 6-5, was that they wanted to stay with the RCMP, use the Perryvale and Taylor report that says that they do a workload analysis. CRPA came back with their workload analysis, said they needed 17 this year, and I think it was 20-some the following year. So I'm just wondering, so we passed saying that we accept the CRPA, we accept that the RCMP are giving us what they need, and now we're going to try to hold back and say, well, maybe not. So, it's one thing or the other. I mean, I just find this, I just don't know where this come from. Of course, policing costs. Go ahead, Greg, appreciate it.
Sorry.
There we go. From the estimates in the budget that was prepared in 2025 from CRPA, it looks like what they did, they adjusted for the timing of the new hires, and that gap was about $2.2 million. So they've said, okay, let's say we got 17, we're going to subtract off the savings because we know we're not going to get all 17 right in the fiscal year. So that's, I think your question is, what's that amount? That's about $2.2 million that would be added. Would they get them all in January, sort of as a start? If you said,
So if we've got 17 members in January, it would cost us $9 million?
No, it would cost us 2.2 more than what the current budget has in it.
So it'd be 11 million.
Correct. Yes. It would have been $11 million increase versus the 9 that was in that, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Richard.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Just to clarify, whoever went through their package prior, the recommendation changed at 11:30 today, right? Just so that all council is aware. I don't know if you want to reread that into the, or not, just making a point.
I can
tell us how it changed perhaps.
Yeah, so that was, again, it was a last minute change. So I will reread the recommendation and I'll adjust it to remove city or the town of Riverview. So that prior to any future substantial Kodiak Regional Policing Authority budget requests that include further staffing increases being proposed, that the CRPA will provide the City of Moncton Council with a comprehensive data analysis of how the 2025 approved staffing increases have impacted key performance indicators mutually agreed to by the CRPA and the tri-communities, so that any requests for additional staffing increases can be evaluated based on such data. And furthermore, that the municipalities request that the CRPA adhere to the budget submission timelines included in the CRPA budget policy G407, specifically that initial budget submissions shall be brought forward to the Executive Insight Committee no later than 6 months prior to the budget year. And that last piece was the one that's been added later this afternoon to ensure that we were consistent with the budget policy, CRPA budget policy.
Terrific, thank you. Is there anyone who has not spoken on this who wishes to address it? Go ahead, Councillor Edgett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarification, please.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Would this be coming back to council for the additional 2.7 million or whatever for the additional hires?
I mean, within the approval of their budget, there was talk about 17, but
Yeah.
they won't incur the cost of those 17 until 2026. So in their
Because-
2026 budget, there will be an amount in there for the, say, the remaining 10 or 11 or whatever that number they haven't hired to account for those. But I think the concept or the idea is that there's no more, other than the 17 that's been approved to date, and the costs related to those that some will fall into the future budget. There'd be no more additional resources until data is provided, KPIs are provided, that sort of thing, to see the impact on the 17 that would be hired in totality.
Okay, and obviously everybody's not going to be hired at once, so there's no possibility of that total cost being incurred in 2025.
Unlikely.
Unlikely, yes. Okay, thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Anyone else who has not addressed this topic who wishes to speak? I would go back to you, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick one. When we talk about the KPIs, when are we going to get them? We haven't, I don't remember the last time we've seen KPIs, or maybe, Chuck, can you speak on that, the KPIs that were supposed to come forward?
So from the operational plan, I guess we had about 12 of them identified. So we met with the CRPA about a month ago. So we presented the list of KPIs to them. There's an opportunity there for them to add KPIs for areas of oversight that they feel might not be addressed. So we left that with the CRPA committee, in which you have members from each council, I guess, on there. So we're waiting for them to sort of see if there's additional KPIs that they want to add to our original 10 to 12. So we're hopeful to have about 15-ish, give or take a few, for the final list of KPIs. Once that's done, then we'll present it, I guess, probably CRPA would present it to the three councils.
When was the last time that we got KPIs here from the CRPA?
So the KPIs, I guess, it's been about the last set of KPIs that we had that were approved was about 18 months ago. So for the last year, we've been waiting for the CRPA to provide us direction on KPIs.
So I guess the reason why I asked that, Chuck, is that we've just approved 17 members and we didn't have any KPIs. We had no reasoning to hire 17 people because the KPIs were not even out. We hadn't even seen them. So I think that going forward, we got to have KPIs prior to, so have something to measure with. Or, this is, it doesn't make sense. I mean, if we're 18 months, it's really a year and a half, 2 years since we had KPIs. So we have really nothing to measure against, the known and the unknown. correct? So
So the 17, I guess, there's a business plan, so that's what supports the 17. The impact that the 17 are going to have, that's what you need KPIs. Those are the ones that we proposed. We just haven't been able to get them through, all the way through CRPA and add them in. So the 17, the business case was made for that. The impact, I guess, before, I'm assuming, before you vote in any additional members going in, you'll want to see what the impact of these 17, what it was. That's what these KPIs, this set of KPIs, that's what that's going to do. But there might be some other areas of KPIs, for example, there could be financial ones, there could be stuff around HR, a variety of things that maybe CRPA wants to provide oversight. But as far as the impact that the 17 will have, that's in the KPI list now. So you'll see those hopefully shortly.
Well, I'd certainly like to find out, maybe our CIO can maybe invite the chair of the CRPA in to find out why it's taken 18 months to get the KPIs here. Like, this seems like we're voting on something that, you know, has really, unless we have the KPIs or some reason, you know, we can't be going 18 months without them. That doesn't, no KPIs. So anyway, thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Anyone, did you want to take? Yeah, go ahead.
That's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's a great question, Counselor, and I think that's the whole concept of this motion here today is exactly that. Is prior to making any more decisions on any incremental assistance is to ensure that we have those KPIs, they're agreed to, everyone is aware of them, and the RCMP and CRPA can report back to Council ahead of making any future decisions on any future resources, that we'll know what results we'll be getting. That's the intent of today's motion.
Thank you. Again, anyone who has not spoken on this item who wishes to go, I would go back to you, Councillor Edgett.
Thank you, Madame la Maire.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Motion to reflect our need for these KPIs, which Councillor Butler is referring to, either a deadline or a list of the KPIs, something that, I mean, how can, when you really look at this, how can we possibly evaluate based on data when we haven't decided what the start data is and we don't have it? I mean, I guess we assumed it would be available at the first of this year. Is that what you were considering, Councillor Butler, that it would be available ASAP?
You would have to turn it on.
Yes, Councillor Ridge, that's exactly what I was saying, is that it's pretty hard to vote on a motion like this when we don't have any idea. It's still in the hands of the RCMP and also the CRPA with the KPIs. And what if they don't come back for another 6-8 months? I don't think that we have any, we don't have really any say when they come back because we're hands length away from the CRPA. So
can we put an amendment to this motion to reflect a deadline?
I think the deadline's imposed in the CRPA budget policy. So again, so we do have to have that in our possession no later than 6 months prior to the budget exercise. We know that the budget exercise starts in September to be approved in November. That means by April, we have to have mutually agreed to KPIs. So in this motion, we're already indicating that if we abide by the CRPA budget policy, we're bounding ourselves by those deadlines.
So is April the deadline?
I don't think there's a specific date, but I mean, we could get a specific date what that
I think
look like.
something like that. Would you agree? I think really we need to have some sort of understanding of what we're voting on here today, because I think we really do need those KPIs.
Okay, I'm looking at staff to try to get a sense of when they feel that a date would be acceptable, I guess, or.
Well, you referred to the policy, so I was just wondering what the policy is.
The policy indicates that we have to have the budget submission timelines included in the CRPA budget policy no later than 6 months prior to the budget year. And
May 1st?
May 1st? Sure. Should be able to identify May 1st. Chuck, I see nodding.
So for May 1st, I guess we could do the staffing part of it, but we couldn't do the full budget part of it because there's a lot of data coming from the
Oh,
city.
this is the KPIs, right? It's not the budget, yeah.
So the KPIs, I guess, KPIs take a year to get. So the KPIs that we're voting on now will be available just before. So these KPIs are going forward, I guess. So we'll show this is what it's going to do to the KPIs. This is the baseline. So
Okay,
We have-
I just want to make sure we get clarification here, if Counselor, is the list of KPIs versus the results of the KPI. So if we're thinking of the list of KPIs, what will be measured by a certain date, that we can get for May 1st. The results of that there will be a lag in those results to understand that have those KPIs improved over a period of time. Therefore, at that point in time, giving council the data to be able to make informed decisions on the impact of the additional resources. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Okay, it seems to be two decisions to be made here. Like one is what are these specific KPIs?
Yep.
That's yet to be determined.
Yet to be determined, and that's what in the recommendation. Yeah.
Okay. And what is the other part? The other part in my mind that's more important even than the KPIs. I mean, people can agree what they're going to measure is the measurement. So when do we get the starting measurements in order to be able to compare it to the next recommendation?
Typically, we're going to start measuring these set of KPIs, the newest set, if you will, April 1st. That's when we start to sort of measure, I guess, at that point. So we've said this a few times. I guess I don't want to speak for the superintendent, but more than likely what we had predicted in last budget season and the additional members that we would get, we won't have KPI results in time to ask for more members next year, other than maybe population growth, because we won't have the results. If you take, for example, solvability, I guess if that is one of the KPIs that we suggested for this year, that typically would take a 1 year, I guess, of time, and then an extra year just to get the result, because it's how many of cases you've solved within the year. So we're looking at a long time, I guess, before we can actually show the impact of the new 17, probably beyond what December, January of next year would be. So the KPI, the list of KPIs will start to be measured April of this year. Probably about 15 new, some of them we've used before, but about 15 KPIs starting in April.
So what about the ones we've used before? Would we not use those to compare how we go forward?
We could, but if you look at solvability, I guess you wouldn't know if the 17 has impacted that because you haven't hired the 17 until January.
Okay, but is that the most important KPI and the only one we're looking at, or?
So perhaps, Counselor, I can add is we want to allow staff, the people that work with CRPA and whatnot, to bring forward back to council what those KPIs are, what the intended improvements or benefits of these additional officers are. And again, what we're seeking today is direction to limit the idea that if we don't have the results that council is comfortable with during the budget process, then you have a decision you can make to not approve additional officers. Last year, we were basing it on a business case without KPIs. What we're trying to accomplish today is indicating, let's get the right KPIs and allow the professionals to determine what those are, which ones that we can capture, which ones we can report on, bring it back to council to make that case to the future budget process, that those investments has resulted in improved public safety. And then council will have a decision to make based on those results if they want to approve additional officers. What this also provides us is if we don't have the data and if RCMP has not been able to provide the data, it may just delay those additional officers another year.
Okay, because it appears we will not possibly have that data at the upcoming budget process.
And could very well
And we
be,
have to report.
absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. I have one more question, I'm sorry. So when it's brought forward to the Executive Insight Committee, who is that and where does that go from there?
So the Executive Insight Committee are the 3 CAOs,
Right.
the 3 CFOs, as well as the CRPA, I think is a management board of the CRPA.
Okay, and at that point, it just goes into the budget process and we see it at budget time, or does that come to council beforehand?
Usually it comes to council, does it come before? No, it would come at budget, but I mean, at that point in time, we may, like this year, the CRPA came in and made a presentation
Okay.
ahead of budget, so.
Correct.
Once we have the executive insights, we'll determine the
That's
approach.
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, just to further clarify the CAO's point is, I think the original purpose was to have the 3 municipalities provide the same motion to clearly indicate to the CRPA no further budget request would be considered without the proper KPIs in place. That's really what it comes down to. And I think the whole purpose was to have that same motion adopted by all 3 municipalities, I believe.
Thank you for that clarity, Jeff.
If I could,
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Crossman's up next. Go ahead, Councillor Crossman. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Mr. CAO, I'm just curious to know, in the Taylorville and Taylor report that came out, the recommendation was that City of Moncton continue with the RCMP. And in that report, it says, and I'm only looking at the executive, I could pull out the thicker report. It talks about the increase in RCMP's costing compared to a municipal costing. And it's pretty dramatic. Is there some way, somehow, that we're going to actually challenge the P&T report to find out once these KPIs come back? Because in the last page of the executive report, it does state that the tri-community, the tri-community shall retain the current RCMP Kodiak Regional Policing model. Are we actually going to start to have a debate where we're going to be looking at possibility of continuing with the RCMP or transitioning to municipal force based on, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I'll say it anyway, based on the lack of data that is coming from CRPA and the RCMP with regards to public safety in the city of Moncton and accountability?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was not our intention to review any of that, Counselor. I
Okay.
think the indication here, and again, I don't want it to, I don't want it to be misunderstood that we are not getting full or support from the CRPA and from the RCMP. I think this is just to clarify our position and all 3 communities. However, in our conversations that we've had so far, I think that, it's been extremely positive conversations that we're very confident we can get this done, but this will allow us the motion to be able to ensure that it does get done.
And how much of the recommendations that came out of that study do we know that the CRPA authority has come clean on and actually successfully carried out? Do we know of any of them?
We'd have to go back to the CRPA and get that information, Counselor. I think that there's a number of them that they have. But to get a full list, we could get CRPA to come in and present the implementation of the Perryvale and Taylor report.
I think that would be really, I'd welcome that. There's only 6 of them.
Yep.
So I really think that if we're going to understand and I mean, I voted against RCMP budgets in the past based on increases. And if we want to truly understand this, I think we need to get a full aspect on exactly what CRPA is doing, what RCMP is requesting, and how it affects our community. Safety-wise, accountability is going to have to be the key here. The public is looking at city council to be accountable for policing services. So I think if we could do that, Mr. CAO, that would be great for me. I would really appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. I don't see any other questions. And again, this is, you will need to turn on your, there you go. There you go. Go ahead.
It's just, I would say, I think Councilor Regid and I are on the same page here. we realize that there's KPIs coming forward, but I think that, you know, we have no idea. We just hired 17 people or gave the budget go ahead for 17, and we have no, we haven't had no KPI since for 18 months. So I would hope that maybe that we could get an update on where the KPIs are standing right now. Who should I ask to do that?
I can bring them next to the next council, Brian. Pardon me?
Yeah, well, I'd like to actually get a list of the KPIs, because I forget the last time we even had a presentation about KPIs here. They came, we didn't accept them at that time, and they went, and they were supposed to come back.
Counselor,
So-
oh, sorry. I thought Counselor Kingston might be able to provide some insight for you.
And I apologize, I didn't attend the last meeting, but certainly we can request to get the KPIs here in its current state. I'm just basing it on the CRF today, and I think what I'm seeing, and to support councillor comments, that the three municipalities, Moncton, Dieppe, Riverview, based on the last budget increase and the 17 new members coming in, just want to be, as we as councils, be fully adequately prepared to come in once the KPIs indicate. But again, the KPI and the timing factor doesn't quite work in the fall. The 17 new members hired by the end of the year, we won't have the complete, apparently the KPI results not in time. So that affects the budget consultations, correct? So it's important that the three communities be on board on the same page on this. And again, the Executive Insight Committee will meet at that time. But based on the CRF today, I'm in agreement, obviously, as a council member, that those discussions are held well in advance, if possible, to avoid, and the KPI workload analysis has to back up the new members requested for 25 and 26. So it's kind of a complicated piece moving forward, but I certainly do agree with the motion today to make sure the three councils are adequately aware and we get the KPI results when we can. But I'll bring forward, obviously, at the next public session with the CRPA, the KPI update as it stands today. But thank you, Madame Mendes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kingston. I see no other questions at this time. I think it is high time for the CRPA to come into council and make a presentation. It has been a long time since they've been here. And today, again, we are just voting on the need to have real data before we add any more members. So on the question on the floor, we had a mover and seconder. This is, please tap your screen. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I think this concludes today's agenda. Correct? Yes. Councillor Wishart, motion to adjourn. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.